Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Word on the Snakevine. I'm your host Ross Deacon, and on this podcast we talk all things about venomous animal related, from venom research, venomous animal husbandry, animal conservation, herping, and of course snakebite and snakebite initiatives from all around the world. On this episode, I have joining me as my co-host.
Hi, I'm Denny.
Hey, I'm Squirl.
Hi, I'm Edd, and before we start, I have to do a few formalities. Views expressed in this episode are the views of the guest host, not for the facility or the company they work for.
And today we have Emmy Award winner James Reid, who you all may know from the Minutes to Die documentary. How are you today, James?
Good, I'm good. That's quite an intro.
Yeah, it always takes us a few takes, as you've probably seen. And then the outros are even worse because it takes me about 6 takes. And
you're going to publish those, aren't you? Because this took 10 minutes to get going. Nobody knows.
I always try my best to publish as much of the outtakes as possible in the episodes. It just shows that we are actually human rather than science-based robots, which I think has been something Squirrel's probably been called a fair few times. So as you're saying, today we've got James Reid with us. Most people will know James from his Minutes to Die documentary, which has shown at quite a lot of symposiums around the world, and especially around Europe recently. And it is about what happens within a snakebite situation. So, James, I think it'd be a really good story to kind of start from the start. So, how did you get into recording a documentary about snakebite, and kind of what were your main drivers to wanting to really do that?
Well, there's probably 3 or 4 different how we got into it stories, and it's really kind of crazy and cool because we're here in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and I've worked in television my whole life, local San Francisco television, doing stories on where to get the best Chinese food, or the history of the San Francisco Bay Area, quirky people stories. I used to go do stories of little old men who drive around in pink Cadillacs that go around town collecting women's bras, putting bras into a giant ball of bras, and he'd drive around the country with a ball of bras towing his car, and he'd get a Guinness Book of World Record for stringing bras across the Grand Canyon to celebrate breast cancer history. So we'd go do crazy stories of interesting people like that. And I would do stories on, dirty jobs. We had a big series here in the United States about, people that have these crazy jobs, sewer cleaners, and people that do artificial cow insemination. Crazy gigs, and we would highlight them. And so after I got done doing this 20-year career in television, I was kind of having a little siesta, so to speak, when I got a call from a foundation here in the San Francisco Bay Area, the Lilly and Lincoln Foundation. And this is a small family-run foundation. They own a Chinese television station here in the San Francisco market. But their foundation side of it had long done documentaries on global issues that didn't really have much notoriety in the world. And so their specialty was giving a voice to the voiceless, or doing stories that few people had ever heard about. And they just so happened to have met, and we'll probably learn or talk more about him later in the podcast, Dr. Matt Lewin, who is quite known throughout the snakebite field right now. He was coming up with an antidote for snakebites, to buy you time from a snakebite to get time to get to a hospital. And so the foundation happened to just meet him through a chance meeting, and they said, snakebites, of course we have rattlesnakes here in the Bay Area. You get quite a number of bites during the hot season. And so that's really only the snake problem we've heard about. You hear it on the news. But when they said 50,000 people die in India, they kind of said, well, maybe this is the idea for our next documentary. So I got a phone call. So I knew the family. Got got a phone call and they said, well, why don't you look into this and see if this might be a good topic for a documentary? And so I happened to could have taken about 2 weeks, but after like 2 days, I called them back and I said, let's do this. Because what I found, and this is about April 2015, I found that nobody had done a documentary on snakebite. There were no TV shows. If this was an issue that was as big as what was written about in few scientific articles and published papers from just these handful of scientists that had been working on snakebite passionately without funding and notoriety for 10, 20, 30 years. If what they were writing was true and nobody was talking about it, somebody had to give a voice to it. And I figured, I don't need to go do stories anymore about old men collecting women's bras and stringing them across the Grand Canyon. This is the time to go make a difference. And within 2 to 3 months, we were off on a plane off to Kenya and India to begin our filming.
So it all happened pretty quickly then.
Complete serendipity. A chance encounter. And that's how it works. You need to. I always say you have to talk to everybody on this planet because you're going to find something of interest, some connection. And the head of our foundation, Barbara, who happened to meet Matt, happened to learn something, and it took us on this journey that just keeps snowballing. And really, it's been 4 years of some pretty incredible stories.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we'll get into some of those stories as we go through this, hopefully.
Sure.
So when you flew out to Kenya and India, kind of what was the first thing that kind of really struck you kind of with this issue? Because I think probably not knowing as much as you'd like to before you went out there, probably.
Well, we did, the interesting part was the research and the planning to actually, it's not like we were going into Kenya and India with iPhones and, it was a massive production. So what a lot of people don't really understand, and we don't get a chance to talk about it too much until I sit and chat with you guys. The production is actually so huge. To go into a country and film a documentary, we had not only people that were flying from the U.S., from like camera people, audio people, but we'd hire crews in our foreign lands where we would film. So it wasn't just this was a pretty, it was a sizable budget. The foundation was very gracious to, produce something like this and really go out to tell the story and do it right. So all the planning to actually get into country involved, working with embassies who at some point before we left for India, 2 days, we had our visas weren't approved. And we happened to call the embassy or the consul general here in San Francisco, and just so happened we thought maybe they could help us. And as we told them the story about we're getting on a plane to go tell the story of the snakebite crisis that no one's talking about, the assistant consul general started crying, and he lost a friend to snakebite when he was a kid living in India, and now he's in lovely San Francisco. And all of a sudden, let me handle it. And within 24 hours, we had visas to go to India. So all this being said, that to get off the ground with crews of 10, 15 people in the field, and organizing cars and catering and food for our workers and all that stuff. But not only that, it's working with people on the ground to find where we would go shoot. So we worked with George Amandi, who's connected with Liverpool and is the Kenyan Research Institute down at the Primate Center in Nairobi. George and a few others helped go, for the few weeks before we were filming, go into Baringo County to, find victims, work with the hospitals, get the buy-in from, ministers of health at the county level to say, we've got an American crew coming to tell the story of snakebite. And, it's a good thing because someone's finally going to put a spotlight on it. So a lot went into just getting in the field. So if that answers your question, it's getting to the ground. When our crews arrived, it was one of those things where you would just walk into any village, and this is what strikes me to anywhere I've been where snakebite is prevalent. You can walk into a village and ask somebody if they know a family member, a friend, someone knows somebody, and somebody knows somebody else who might have been bitten by a snake, and everyone will scatter in all directions and take you to victims. That was the most staggering thing, and we figured if that was happening on the ground in one little part of the world we happen to be in, it must be happening in neighboring villages and counties, and you start seeing the scope of the snakebite problem is massive. So I think that's really what stuck with us when we got there. Everyone wanted their stories told beyond the people we had selected, and we could have done. I mean, you could go do victim stories and never stop doing victim stories in your life.
So with the sheer quantity of bites per day, you would, as you say, you'd never ever get time to finish. I don't think with that,
Yeah, in India, we were filming. Matt Lewin and his team were actually doing research for their project for quite some time in down in Tamil Nadu, India, and so it was a perfect place for us to go film in this snakebite hospital. And it was a revolving door of patients while on the days that we had set to film in the hospital. We got plenty of stories. And it was on the very last night, as Dr. Sundaraj, who was hosting us at his hospital, he took the crew up to his apartment and had a really lovely dinner and celebration as a thank you for bringing the story to light. And just as the camera gear is all packed, ready to go back to the United States the next day, and they get a call. If you've seen the film, he's our marquee victim, Perry Asami. We got this call, and we just said, well, let's go. And all the camera gear comes back out. We rush to the hospital, and it ended up being the seminal story throughout our documentary. Just a classic case of getting bitten on the way home from work in the dark. This was a good outcome where 30 minutes he got to the hospital and he was fine. He was talking, and then all of a sudden the antivenom started going in him, and he started getting quite a significant allergic reaction. And we just followed him through the night, and the next day went back to his made the flight. We made our flight, but we went and met the wife back at her home, and it just goes to show you that the stories are endless.
Did you find that when you went across the embassy, they kind of went above and beyond to help you out? Did you find that when you got to India, there were people just kind of, obviously they were trying to show you people who had been bitten by snakes, but did they kind of, when they found out the cause you were trying to display to people, did you find that they were just trying to help out as much as possible with that?
India is different. India is quite different than Africa in some degrees, and it's of course it's going to be different in any state of India or small region. The government of India, we reached out for all of those few months of planning to get into government hospitals, and it was almost like a taboo. I don't know what it would be like now to kind of approach the story now that snakebite has much more recognition in these last 2 to 3 years. And, the government at many levels in India are starting to take notice, and more, ministries of health and are getting involved. It might be a different story now, but then nobody wanted us in a government hospital. We couldn't get permits. So we had to do it through this private hospital and maybe hope to try to get into a more of a tertiary local clinic. But it didn't. It never happened. Nobody would let our cameras in. So you can't say that on a nation of India as a whole, they're trying to cover up the snakebite problem, but just trying to get statistics, and we have this in the film. You have the million death study, which comes up with the number of roughly 46,000 deaths, but the Indian government puts out statistics where the numbers are less than 2,000 people that die a year. So that's a big discrepancy. What the government's saying is, some 40 times more is what was studied from what came out in the million death study. So, I don't know if it was hiding the issue, but and you hear those stories all the time, so it could very well be. But that doesn't change the fact that once you're in a village, the actual community runs in all directions to take you to a snakebite victim if you ask.
Yeah.
As you say, it's so widespread in these countries and stuff that it's so easy for them to be able to show you those different stories, and a lot of these stories have probably all got very similar beginnings and extremely similar endings. A lot of them, unfortunately, but as you say, kind of with the government's with the governmental data, I think one thing that we've seen from the podcast and talking to different people, that's the biggest thing, is that actually the government aren't necessarily trying to hide it, but their figures aren't necessarily always correct.
Well, I mean, absolutely, but most of the time, in so many cases, there's no reporting. They don't report snakebite as a recordable event. You'll also just have, it's just not, it's not on the hospital records. Surveillance data is so limited. It's really from these, the studies that have been done over, since the last 15 years. You'll get the, burden data, in a variety of studies, but there aren't many of them. So, the numbers that, even the WHO uses come from these few studies. But you're really not getting a lot out of, counties and states, or, at a national level even. And that's what the whole roadmap, which we'll get into, maybe a little bit, that's what the whole WHO strategy, aims to change is, we've got to get the data. We've got to, get proper surveillance out there to see what the true impact is.
Sorry, I was talking with mute on then. I always seem to do that in every single episode, at least.
What were you saying?
I was just... You can say that, but I can't remember now. That's the worst part about it. Because I get flustered with the mute, so I'm always like, oh...
So what was in that glass with the ice that I heard earlier?
I'm not necessarily sure it was the cider. That's the thing. So kind of moving that on. So kind of the documentary, I think, has the documentary gone as far as you kind of thought it would? Because I think it seems to be very popular, and a lot of the symposiums that are happening around the world are playing it, and I think it's getting a lot of coverage within kind of academic and hobby based circles. Did you ever expect it to kind of go like this, or did you expect it to kind of go?
No. Nobody did. I mean, I don't think, sitting here in, the San Francisco area with the Lillian Lincoln Foundation team, it's a small group, and we just kind of have rolled and adapted with this, I think is probably the best way to put it. So many times when you make a documentary, and it could be on anything, and you hear about documentaries mostly, that are film festivals, and now of course Netflix and streaming, and you get stuff online. We're now prone to see documentaries a lot more, but the way it always was is that documentaries would be, they kind of come out, they have a shelf life, they win some awards, they go to film festivals, and then the filmmaker's on to their next project, because they're out to build their notoriety, build their career, get on to the next one, make money. In our case, the foundation was doing this for complete goodwill, and so it wasn't that we did some film festivals originally, but our goal was a little bit different, and we thought this is more trying to get the right people to see the film as opposed to just general awareness for public audiences, in the United States or Europe. Of course, that's going to be important, but let's get the film into university students that are in global health programs all around the world. They go and they work on various issues throughout their schooling. They might go into the field for a summer and do work on the known issues. But let's get snakebite onto the radar of these upcoming global health experts through their schooling. So we started really focusing on the global health programs at universities, even to get the faculty interested and wanting to talk about snakebite as a neglected issue. And so and that's really turned out well, because snakebite's now popping up more and more in curriculums. So we did the universities. Conferences were a big thing. So we started looking at where are the tropical medicine global health conferences around the world. So everything from the ASTMH here in the United States, Tropical Medicine Conference. We've screened it there twice, and like the first time we screened it at this conference, we had some of the team from Wellcome Trust who happened to be watching the film that night. It was on an evening, and they came up. David Williams from GSI, University of Melbourne, now is at WHO. He was on a panel we did after the film, and never forget Mike Turner from the Wellcome Trust coming up, and it was the first time Wellcome Trust had really, they knew about the issue, but it was kind of something that was a pivotal moment of them. They went back basically to England, and within like a few weeks they wanted to do a screening. So they had a conference. So they screened it, and that started getting Wellcome Trust more involved, more in the topic, and that's what we wanted to do with the film. We wanted it to open the doors for people that had some way they could contribute at any level to this issue, because the slate was clean, right? The snakebite was just trying to, the people that had worked on snakebite for years, especially the global snakebite initiative and Health Action International, everyone was working to try to get the NTD status at WHO. So while that was going on, the film was running around telling the story of snakebite around the world and pulling more people into the tent. So we thought, well, maybe after the first year, that was it. The film's literally been out for 2 years and a few months now. Who knew, right? And it's still being used, and it's a great. I like to look at it. It's a great door opener. So, we're really trying to build the knowledge of snakebite with different NGOs and organizations here in the United States, and so it's great for us to send a link to the film that an organization can send out to their membership to learn more about snakebite. And I tell you, more times than not, it opens up some door of how they get involved. And so we couldn't have imagined the film would have still has legs to open doors.
And as you say, it's still being shown all over the world. Like next week, it's being shown at a European symposium in Holland and stuff. And there's probably more and more plans all over the world for it to be shown. And I think it's only going to continue to be shown and kind of be an eye opener for a lot of people with kind of.
So I can vouch for that. I started at LSTM in November, so just as the film was finished, I believe, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And my first week there, Paul had a rare half day off, and I'd only been there a week.
They let him off.
Oh, he had to go to the dentist. It wasn't by choice. So he took me over to the lab side of LSTM and just kind of dumped me with one of the postdocs, Stu Ainsworth. And Stu was like, well, I'm leaving now. Have you seen Minutes to Die? I'm like, no, haven't seen it. He's like, right, sit down there and basically watch this film for the rest of the day. Okay, it's not a problem. That's the first time that I'd read about Snakebite. I knew kind of some of the figures. It was the first time that I saw kind of how involved or how little was involved in Snakebite. And it definitely spurred me on further in my own career from it. That's my little side part of Minutes to Die.
No, that's what's cool to hear. I mean, the again, we're not out. We don't make money on the film. We're not out for awards. We're just out to, when I hear, somebody who I had this woman who a master's student in Switzerland that screened the film a few times, and this was just to her community of global health students in their club, and next thing you know, this is what she's chosen to do for the rest of her life now. I mean, she may decide at some point, I can't say the rest of her life, but Snakebite is what she's doing now, and so she's bringing her university into the issue, and wants to do research. So it's the same thing. It tells the story, and if you want to get on the bandwagon, so that's what I love to hear.
It kind of opened it up as well. I think that in the past few years, there've been a lot more openings for research, masters, PhDs, things like that are involved around looking at Snakebite. So I think that's kind of a huge kind of positive that's come off the back of it.
Sure.
And it's also kind of opened a lot of regular people's eyes and stuff, and it's given people like ourselves to have that platform to kind of stick our hands in the air and go, hey, look, this is an issue. Here is the documentary that you've all probably seen or have heard about, and kind of try and find your local showing of it, or a showing local to you of it, and actually see why we're talking about this issue so much, and how this is impacting people's lives so much in these countries from all over the world. And it's not just impacting third world countries, it's impacting Western countries with the research that we're doing and the jobs that it's building, and kind of the new treatments that are coming out from people like Matt and stuff, and it's kind of it's growing and it's snowballing into this massive thing, but it's still relatively unknown. Whereas I think Minutes to Die has really kind of opened up that opportunity for a lot of people, as Squirrel says, and I think that's a great thing. It's a great thing to see, and to obviously for you to be genuinely involved in that. I think it would have been pretty incredible.
Well, it's humbling, but it's also to I often think there's a line in the film, and I often think about it. People that are suffering from snakebite, they don't know what's really going on at a global level. They're dealing with trying to have their lives saved, running from a hospital to a hospital if there's no antivenom. They're dealing with it, and they don't know what the world is doing right now. That the WHO put snakebite on its NTD list, and they have a strategy for it. And the Wellcome Trust has just pledged £80 million for research and development of new treatments. I wonder what it's like for a snakebite victim who just knows that they've got 10, 15 years of debt to pay for their treatment.
If not longer.
Longer. Maybe,
Longer, yeah.
Every situation is different, whether it's, the mother and father in Mogosho, Kenya, that, another one of the little girls that is blind and can't walk from spitting cobra bite, who's in our film. we just actually saw her recently. I sent a crew out to kind of see how she was for a little piece we were doing, and she's just 3 years older, but still has to be taken care of 24/7. So all the different stories that are out there, whether it's debt or living with a disability or just missing a family member, or fearing every day that it could happen again. I wonder what somebody would say who's suffering like that, to know that we are out there working for them. And it's just a matter of time that things start feeding down to them, and, whether it's getting antivenoms or new treatments. That's what I think about. And that's humbling.
It is, and it's such a kind of a great thing to kind of, especially for people like yourselves whose work is majority of your work is kind of in that field now, and kind of just for us to see the kind of the uptake that we've had from this podcast, and people getting involved and sending us messages wanting to be involved, is kind of it's an incredible thing to see that actually people are starting to take the information on board and starting to work with it, and starting to, even if they spread a little piece of information, like everybody shares a status on snakebite treatment, there's that kind of barrel effect that happens with social media, where you have one person shares it and another person sees it, shares it, and kind of, before you know it, it's getting to the people that it could help quite easily. And just understanding like kind of how that works, and kind of the impact you can have, even a little bit of impact you can have on somebody's life. It makes doing these hard things and doing these things, like for us the podcast, just makes it worthwhile. As you say, for that little girl, obviously the new treatments aren't going to be here soon enough for her, but for her it'll make a big difference in her life when, if she goes on to end up having children, and they're still going to be living in that same area doing the same kind of work, and having the chance to be bitten by the same snakes. But if you can do a piece of work that'll effectively help save somebody else's life, like one of her family members' life, for her, everybody pushing for this work is worthwhile. It's definitely
Absolutely.
I mean, it kind of is being seen on the ground level, in line with the International Snakebite Day in September. The BBC covered the KSRIC, the Kenyan Snakebite Research and Intervention Centre, and how the use of the motorcycle ambulances is being implemented.
That was one of the coolest audio listings.
Yeah.
Such a cool. If you guys put a link up, that's just super cool.
There's a video version of it as well, so it actually has the video with a lot of the audio. And seeing the community, I'll send it to you later if I can find it. We've got it somewhere. The community level, where they had like the gathering to discuss snakebite and discuss the treatment, the implementation of how the motorcycle ambulances are working. You can see on the ground level that the work that's been in the pipelines for quite a few years being developed has an impact. It's fantastic. So as you were saying there, it is in Kenya. If that can be expanded further, you might not be able to save the lives from the people in the documentary, or they might not be improved, but it is coming.
Yeah, and so many different layers of it, and it's a big world out there, and snakebite covers a map that is just enormous. So planning for interventions is it's pretty massive. But when you think about what Rob did to see Rob Harrison to see through that motorcycle project, to get it to the point, because it was when we filmed with Rob Harrison from LSTM and for the documentary in Kenya. Rob was the main one who helped really set up a lot of the initial planning of this documentary, and making all the contacts. But he had always talked about the motorcycle, wanting to get the motorcycle program up and running, and it was a matter of time. And here it is, to have seen that a few weeks back. And, wow, it's happening. And that's really
it's happening. It was a matter of time, and there was trial and error. The idea was to have the trailer, but the trailer actually proved to be really bad. So they've scrapped that, changed it. But the motorcycles are up and running, and they are having an impact. So as you said, Rob was very keen to push it. and to see it through, and it is looking like it will be a fantastic idea.
Yeah, and that's really what the kind of the whole strategy of the WHO is, and the kind of things that people do on the ground now. It's all really piloting things. So it's setting up programs, seeing how they work, doing the due diligence on it, and when all goes right, rolling that out further to neighboring communities and in other countries. So I mean, those are the kind of great stories right now that it's still. This is what like 3.5, 4 years from the first real. Rob Harrison called a group of the snakebite experts from around the world to Cambridge for a kind of a what do we do now kind of get together. And that meeting, it was in September of 2015, and we were there filming it. It was the first thing we had really filmed. You could just see the minds of these experts who said, you know what, we have been struggling without funding and notoriety, and we really need to push WHO to get this on the list. And it was at the time Sanofi Pasteur was pulling out of the market. MSF, the folks with Doctors Without Borders, put out the word to the world and said, this can't happen anymore. We can't have people pulling out of antivenom production, and this is only going to cause great detriment to sub-Saharan Africa. It was just that time, so 4 years ago, that the momentum started building, right? And then next thing you know, here we are 4 years. Where we're at, where the snakebite community is at right now, is astonishing. We had people at the WHO launch of the roadmap in Geneva in May. Some people inside WHO itself, but most of the comments were, this is such a vibrant, passionate community of people that the snowball of people that have been built, up month after month after month in these 4 years. They're like, you guys have mobilized some amazing resources and passion. And it's really an incredible blessing to watch. And it's just growing. So it's keeping those little ideas snowballing, and activity snowballing, and collaboration snowballing. Pretty cool.
You definitely said one word there that I think is going to help a lot. That's currently kind of, some people are for it, some people are against it. As collaboration. I think we see such a difference when we have in other industries and stuff where two people work together, and especially in this, all the issues are very similar across a lot of the issues are similar across a lot of the big regions of snakebite. So seeing that collaboration between different initiatives, between different government sets, between different people, I think will really, really help accelerate all the work that's being done and the help that these people can get.
Absolutely, and that's that's another reason when we do screenings, we're doing one, believe it or not, we're doing a big screening in Washington D.C. at the end of October, and this is focused around getting some people from USAID in the room, getting some international relations committee members from our government and NGOs. There's a ton of NGOs that are related to Africa and India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, based in DC. Let's try to get as many people into the room, because snakebite can't be a silo project. If you start tying in with more organizations that say, well, we're already doing this for another disease in country, well, maybe we can collect some data while we're doing this work, in the countries we work in. So you're just bringing people to the table to just know about the idea and kind of try to spark a chord to see how they might be able to collaborate. And I guarantee you, every time we pull groups of people like that into a room, there's a whole host of things that follow. And it's not just with the film. It's, the organizations that are out there now doing work all around the world are also doing the same kind of thing. It's these collaborations, and that's why it's snowballed so quickly. There's not a there's not a person that I think either sees the film, hears a story of Snakebite, reads something about it that doesn't say wow. And if they're a person that has a position or something to offer, it usually opens the right doors and people get connected.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen that with obviously with doing the podcast. Kind of one guest leads into kind of mentioning somebody else who they've worked with or they're working with, kind of like, oh, actually, they'd be really good. They'd do a really good. So,
Sure.
like, and kind of that's how we kind of came to speaking to yourself. Obviously, we spoke to Di Bar, and I kind of said, oh, actually, speak to James. He's got a really good story to tell with Minutes to Die, and then the work that he's kind of doing after. So kind of he'd be a really good person to get on. Is kind of she'd felt like she couldn't particularly add something from her part, but yeah, it's great. So that kind of leads us.
Well, thanks, Di Bar. That who's probably right now. I love Di. We were in Papua New Guinea together with when we went to film David Williams and down in PNG, and she's a kick. David and her together as work colleagues were hilarious when we were down there filming. I'm just throwing this out because it's a side story, a behind the scenes filming story. Di is a great snake handler. She can extract a taipan till the cows come home. She's great. She and David, we were trying to film a shot of David's snakebite ambulance coming down the road, and it was a long day. It was hot. It was sticky. I think we probably had to take the shot 5 or 6 times because someone would cross the road and they'd have to slam on the brakes. And all we wanted was the ambulance, lights and sirens, buzzing down this kind of open, rural highway. And David and Di thought it would be funny to make us take one more take by blasting AC/DC. So we couldn't get any natural sound. Now in the ambulance is bursting down the highway, blasting AC/DC. And I thought, these are pretty funny people. And Di's she's hilarious. Sorry, side note. So thanks, Di, for the connection.
Yeah, we don't mind this. We don't mind the side notes, especially when it's about somebody who's had such an impact on a lot of different projects around the world and stuff. So I think it's nice to get these little bits of human. They're like the human aspects of these people's work, because people got to remember these people have got their own lives and stuff as well, isn't? So kind of, I think that kind of leads us on to kind of the work that you're doing now. So kind of,
Yeah.
so what's happened since Minutes to Die? Where have you kind of gone with the work, and kind of what do you see coming in the future, or what are you kind of doing now?
Yeah, so as I said, the foundation, we just kind of ebb and flow, and we really we kind of try to step in and help where and when it's needed and will have a benefit. So we've done things like a couple years back, we got Kofi Annan, who was starting to be involved before he passed away in Snakebite, and he was pretty pivotal. We worked with them to do Kofi Annan to do a video on Snakebite. We kind of have supported the WHO with video projects and such that they need. It's kind of in a way, we're kind of like the PR video arm of Snakebite, and that's kind of what I do. So while I still manage people that want to screen the film, it's kind of going more into advocacy and impact, and how we could either use our footage to help other, the BBC, or somebody's doing another documentary, somebody's doing a promotional or fundraising video for their university and they need footage. So we kind of serve that role, but we also are, helped create new videos that tell different stories on Snakebite. And just recently we just launched for Snakebite Awareness Day, something that our foundation had really thought was a need, which are prevention videos. So for quite some time, it's always been said that until programs from the WHO kind of roll down to the ground. The thing that's always needed now is a farmer, a villager, a housewife, a school kid to know how to prevent themselves from getting bitten, what to do in the event that they did get bitten. And there's posters. There's a number of groups that do the do's and don'ts of snakebite and proper health seeking behavior posters. But we thought maybe doing a video, because that's our specialty, in different languages too, would be something that with WhatsApp. I've heard so many people that say we have health groups in India that we actually have people that work in rice paddies, farmers. We have health groups that we send health information down to that are farmers. Well, why not do a snakebite video in their native language so they can get it on WhatsApp? Or a kid could see this video in a school when they're doing prevention trainings on snakebite. So we stepped in to do that, and that was a huge undertaking. Our crews, I didn't go, but our crews went back to Kenya just in July, and also to southern India with Ram Whitaker. We filmed these videos, came back, spent like 6 hardcore weeks editing, casting voice actors to record, in the script, getting the scripts translated, and then, which is a feat amongst itself, and then having native voice actors record, which most of the people that were recording our videos were in India recording, or for our African videos, our Pidgin English was done by a Nigerian voice actor, and we'd always be up in the middle of the night here in the United States on voiceover sessions, dealing with Skype sessions, because we wanted to hear what they were saying, and but we didn't know what they were saying, right? We had to have an English to Pidgin narration expert on the call with us, so we could have them making sure they were saying the right thing. But we did 12 of these sessions all around the world, all in 6 weeks, and edited these things and just got them out in September. It was probably it was harder than making the documentary.
Well, we've shared a couple of the videos on the Facebook page, so hopefully our listeners have had a chance to see a couple of them. They're absolutely incredible with the little cobra flying around and stuff. It's really quite an interesting video, and that's something that cool. One of our other guests has done is Dr. Tree. She did a video with puppets on snakebite and stuff.
Yep.
Little things like that you don't realise actually how much impact they can have on.
Oh, absolutely.
They can have in these areas.
Matt, Dr. Matt Lewin here, who's got his Verisplitib drug. He a couple of years ago, he met a guy, I want to say it was from Ghana, that recorded a song on snakebite that would be played on radio stations, and it was this catchy phrase about conservation and watching yourself from getting a bite. And those things have such incredible impact, and of course that's why we decided, we didn't want to just go film in India and then re-record or subtitle them for Africa. We had to go to Africa to film a version for Africa. We had to go to India to film a version for India, because it's so important to get the sensitivities of locality. And whether you're doing a puppet, whether Tree's doing a puppet show. Actually, I can't. Somebody was doing a cartoon book, and I don't know if it's out yet, so I don't know if it's public. But things like that. It's finding those little locational or regional sensitivities of how people take in information in those parts of the world, and doing that accordingly. So it's great when that happens.
Yeah, and I think more and more of these will come available, as well as people realise the impact that they can have, or the impacts they do have. And that's one thing Sophie from Health Action International said. Like, she's seen the impacts in Uganda and stuff where they're currently working as well. And there's all these different versions of each of the initiatives are trying to do their own version. So as you say, it kind of always leads back to that cooperation, doesn't it? A cooperation standpoint and that. So as you were saying for that, so kind of you've been quite heavily involved in the Snakebite Awareness Day bits and pieces, as far as I'm aware. So kind of how did Snakebite Awareness Day come about, and kind of whose idea was it, and kind of how is that led, and kind of how are we every year? Do you have a plan already for next year, and kind of how do we get involved in that a little bit more?
Good Lord. Do we have a plan for next year? I'm still trying to get my sleep back from this year. The idea really germinated with Tamar Ghosh and the team at the Royal Society of Tropical Medicine. I always get, there's LSTMH, there's RSTMH, and ASTMI. There's so many acronyms. I always get it wrong, so I apologize to Tamar of RSTMH.
I forget them as well, and I work in it every day, so don't worry.
Oh, acronyms are just impossible for me. It's not part of a brain that works. So they were having their symposium on about a year ago. They had their symposium on a host of different diseases, and snakebite was just one that they were going to be talking about. And they came up with the idea of doing International Snakebite Awareness Day on the day that they happen to have their symposium. And Dr. David Williams and I were kind of the ones that started working on it a few months beforehand. And it was just kind of, I guess, the first year, because the WHO we were still in an awareness mode, right? We were still trying to just build up snakebite as a household name amongst all communities. And so last year was the first year, and we did a ton of graphics. I remember, David's really good at doing graphics. I was working on a bunch of videos. He was working on all the graphics, and it seemed like we were just up around the clock for the weeks and days leading up to Snakebite Awareness Day, and rolled it out. And it was, it was a great, pretty successful first doing. And so this year we said, well, we've got to bring more people to the table to kind of organize it. And so it was great. We had, people from Doctors Without Borders, the communications team, who are awesome, and Claire from LSTM, and just got the publicity communications people on calls, because they're the ones who are really good at, of course, how do you promote and how do you build it up. So basically for the second year, it was just kind of having more of a focus on prevention and kind of more celebrating what different people around the world are doing themselves, because this community has gotten so big in such a short amount of time. Everybody has their own little niche. And so this was kind of a year of letting people just tell their stories. But it's really hard to get a world together to figure out what you're going to do. So next year, I have no idea what we're doing yet. You kind of need a little planning time for that. But, we'll see where Snakebite's at, early in the year, and figure out what the need is for Snakebite Awareness Day year 3. It's kind of always been my hope that, we'll have some sort of ambassador for Snakebite. Snakebite needs an ambassador. You need Brad Pitt. You need Prince Harry. You need somebody famous. Like Princess Diana was a great cheerleader for landmines back before, in the years before she passed. And she elevated landmines to something of a household understanding. And Snakebite needs that ambassador. And so I'm hoping that, we'll find some big star, or maybe a sub-celebrity, maybe a soccer star in Africa. We can start small and build up, but it'd be great to have somebody for year 3 that actually is notable and can start really getting the word out to the world who's got a great social media following, basically get out there and say, snakebite is something we should pay attention to, because usually when you get an ambassador, that's when, especially in this age of social media, that's when the story starts spreading. So maybe that's the goal. That's one thing I always want to try to find someone famous.
Yeah, and I think as you say, that kind of getting somebody with a global audience of millions of people rather than thousands of people will make a big difference. And make
also
a
someone
ginormous
who's not really kind of associated with Snakebite, because then their following will probably have never heard of it before, so it kind of reaches a huge kind of untapped audience then.
Yeah, who did you say? Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your...
I didn't have any suggestions at all because I have no idea who would be awesome for that, but just
so you don't
someone who's not necessarily associated with snakebite or even herpetology in general. It would kind of be an awesome way of getting an untapped audience that had kind of never even never even thought about snakes, let alone snakebite before. That'd be awesome.
So you don't have Brad Pitt or George Clooney's number.
No,
is what you're saying.
I can get it for you easily enough.
even if we can get somebody like Sir David Attenborough talking about it more and stuff like that, that'll make a huge difference. And with his interest in herpetology and that, I think it's probably only a matter of time before people like that start talking about it, which then opens the door up to more people and more people talking about it. So it's kind of, I think it will get there. It will definitely get there.
Oh, yeah.
It's, as you say, it's a snowball effect, isn't it, with this? And I think we're seeing more people interested in it this year than what were interested in it last year. So even within the last 8 months, we've kind of like you can see that trend rising of people talking about it and that, and it's a kind of stop. Yeah, and it kind of, as you say, it's only going to be a matter of time before somebody goes, like with Ebola, how quickly did they get an ambassador for Ebola? Probably very quickly, because people kind of went, holy moly, like kind of, that's it was high numbers of people.
It can affect me.
Quickly. Yeah,
that's what the difference is. It could affect me.
Right. And you do hear, forget where somebody was in India recently. A government official was bitten, or a child was bitten. I can't remember, but that's the kind of thing where if you start affecting a politician, or you start affecting somebody that needs to be a decider of policy or something, and that's just how it works. But things only happen over time, right? I'm sure you have issues, especially the UNICEF and UN. They have a ton of ambassadors, famous actors, musicians, and that's kind of a wing of the UN that of their ambassador groups. And now that snakebite is settled into a program at WHO, maybe it's only a matter of time that other networks that have ambassadors are tapped. But it is a big thing, to have somebody out there in the world talking about it that has kind of that viral connectivity. So even
Steve Backshall would be a really good person to have.
Thank you for chiming up in the middle of this conversation. But Steve Backshall would be fantastic.
No, I had echoed on my end. So who did you say?
Steve Backshall. I don't know.
He's a BBC producer.
I was going to say maybe it wasn't the echo. I just don't know who the heck you were talking about.
He's quite well known in the UK for his wildlife-based programs. So being involved in wildlife-based programs, but having somebody like that who does something quite broad, but to quite a broad audience, because I think with reptiles, it's kind of one of them that because it is reptiles, people turn off a little bit from it because they don't like reptiles in general. But if it's somebody whose majority of their programs are about about megafauna rather than big animals like that people seem to care about.
Sure.
That
Well,
it makes a big difference.
yeah, no, it wasn't. I don't know if any of you guys were at the Naturalis conference in Amsterdam last summer. Anyone?
No, we
Is that
weren't.
the one in Leiden?
In Leiden, yes.
Yeah, so we weren't. But
There was
the
a
host
few of LSTM there.
Yeah, definitely. But that was
one of our other hosts was there, but he's not on the call tonight. So
oh, yeah. A shame. So Frank Vonk, who's with Naturalis, he's the TV guy all around the Netherlands on reptiles and wildlife. He actually really spoke up about snakebite, and he's a household name in the Netherlands. And that was the Netherlands probably has the most knowledge of snakebite because of what Frank would talk about and put on social media and such. And you need those people, like the Irwins. Think of the Irwin family. They're a social media master house, right? It would be a couple tweets from them on over time, getting them onto visibility. I think people like that. We just need to talk more about this issue because snakebite still, we may see the snowball growing, but it's still not a household name. It may get an airing on BBC, but it's not like everybody knows about it. And that's the whole thing that I always talk about, the comparison to Ebola. When I started researching for the film, I compared, I was trying to find comparisons of like how to get people to really understand the magnitude of snakebite. And the big comparison was that, in 26 months of recorded, 26 recorded months of Ebola, you had, I think it was 11,000 some odd people dying in the 26 months. But look at the media. It was a household name. I didn't know what Ebola was, but it didn't take long. Sure, it was something that could get on an airplane and come to the United States and infect people, and there were stories of that. But I compared snakebite. The same amount of people roughly that died from Ebola in that time die from snakebite every month. But where are the billions of dollars going into Ebola overnight? Where's the public relations wing of what happened for Ebola for snakebite? It's like, why is something so big just not getting the recognition? And there's probably 10 different answers to that question, but we're getting there. And I still see it. The slate is clean and the slate is open, and there's so much room for exploding this topic so the world knows.
Yeah, I think it's hopefully it'll keep on growing and growing. So I do have an eye on the time, and we are round about the hour mark of recording, which is kind of unfortunately our limit that we have due to.
All right, see you guys later. I gotta go.
Thank you very much for disappearing so quickly.
Hey, no
we do have some questions. Kind of, if a member of the public wanted to see Minutes to Die, how could they do so?
The $1 million question. You would think that after 2 years we would have it public. It's probably, so many people have heard me say this. It's likely getting very close to being public, and I'll just say, that's pretty much the best answer I can give at this point. Just the fact that we still have had some pretty large screenings, and of course this one in DC in the end of October. If it's all out, whether it's on YouTube free, that's what I hope. People don't need to pay to stream it. I hope it would be on YouTube for free and people can watch it, and then people can link to it if they're writing stories about snakebite. But I don't think we really wanted to do that until the time when we've really maximized getting out there to the world to see it, and getting the right people in the rooms to see it. So, people can go to our website, minutestodie.com. There's a contact us button. whether they wanted to host a screening. We also put the film out through an online portal. So Doctors Without Borders came to us and said, we really want to get the film out to share to, people that are working in country and, in camps and villages, but they can't get to a screening, right? So we created this portal. We've done, 100 different portals for different organizations, so they can show to their constituency, their groups, to watch anytime, wherever they are in the comfort of their own environment. So people can get in contact with us. We can let people see the film that way. It's not, go onto YouTube and see it just yet.
Well, hopefully that will come soon enough.
Yeah,
it's more people who get to see it, the better, I think.
Oh, of course.
And,
of course.
I think there's a lot for people to learn from watching it, and kind of the emotional stories and kind of that happen within it. I think people who have seen it will probably agree that you make sure you've got some tissues close by at times from some of the stories are rather emotional and kind of encapsulated, and kind of they really take you to kind of help you understand what these people are going through and stuff. So
makes you walk back into your home and feel very fortunate.
Yeah, it really does. Really does. And that must have been kind of a big part of when you're filming it, that kind of thing. So, also, I think Squirrel has a little bit of a fact. For us.
It's you mentioned the Minutes to Die website, and obviously there's the cool little timer that's at the eye-opening timer at the bottom of it. So
yeah.
From the moment we started the call, which was just coming up to an hour and a half ago, I opened the website just to keep it rolling. And in the time we've been speaking, like the formalities before the entire recording, we are about 900. We've just hit 900 global snake bites just during this time we've been talking, which is an insane amount. And just the amount of mortalities that will have occurred because of those snake bites, it's crazy.
Well, do you want it? It's pretty wild. Do you want to see what's on my laptop? I haven't cached my cookies. Is that really how you say it? Cache my cookies? That sounds like something you do after a late night at a bar. My one computer has not cached, and I am currently up to, this is since we created the website a little over 2 years ago, 48 million bytes.
Oh,
in 2 years.
Oh,
that's a crazy number.
That's
it lost a comma. It's not even. I can't even. Huh? Yeah, I think it's 48 million. Maybe 4.
Even 4.8 million.
4.8. So that's got to be, Yeah, I mean, it's got to be 4.8. The number ran out. I got to talk to our web team about that.
Wow. I mean, they're probably not expecting people to have the web page open for 2 years.
No, they didn't.
That's definitely eye-opening and sobering, kind of thinking about how many people's lives have been changed. So that's absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for coming on today, James. It's been absolutely incredible, and hopefully you'll agree to come on again and kind of. I know we've spoken obviously off the phone a little bit about kind of some of the work that you got coming up, and maybe you can come on and talk about it at a later date and stuff. And I think it would be great to get you on again. I think in a couple of months, however period of time that will be, when you've got numerous more stories to tell. And thank you so much for coming on. Like, just hearing about how how it all came about and stuff it's been great. It's been great, and I hope our listeners have taken something from that, and kind of will get a chance to either have seen or to see Minutes to Die. I think they will. Everybody who's seen it can only speak positives about how well it pulls across such a negative kind of a horrible situation that these people are living in.
It's
So
just it's a day in the life. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. So I'd just like to do the bit of formalities. Please like and share our Facebook page, our Instagram, and also, if you have not noticed recently, we have finally launched our new website on wordofthesnakevine.co.uk, and on there you can get all of our past catalogue of episodes, and you can also start to buy some bits and pieces of merchandise. Those bits and pieces of merchandise, none of the money goes into our pockets. Every single piece of money made goes back into a Snakebite based charity or initiative. We are there is no money that comes from it. We are self-funded, and we will continue to be so for as
Way
long
to go. That's awesome.
as we're about. So please do like and share the Facebook page, and please do get other people involved, and thank you very much for listening.